Hi everybody. Today is the 15th way of the 48 ways of wisdom, and the 15th way is Mishna, referring to the oral law. As Rav Noach Weinberg writes it, oral instruction for life. And as many of us know, the Torah really has two parts to the Torah. There's the written Torah and the oral Torah. And these are two halves of one whole. The written Torah is the 5 books of Moses, the word of God that he gave to Moses to write down. And the oral law, the oral Torah, is the commentary that God explained to Moses during those 40 days that Moses was on Mount Sinai. God was teaching him the explanation of the whole written Torah. You can kind of envision it as like the classes and notes. On Mount Sinai, Moses got the full classes from God with all the details and all the precise instruction. And then the Torah itself, the 5 books of Moses, are like the notes that kind of jot down the gist of the lengthier discussions to remind you, but they're not really fully understandable without the oral law, which really explains them all. So one can really ask a basic question, which is, why do we need the oral law? Why don't we just write the whole thing down? And that way, when you want to know what to do, we could just take out the book and look at it. And I think the answer hints at the fact that oral law is really much more than just the explanation, just the oral law and explanation of the Torah. But oral law is really oral instruction for life, as Rav Noach Weinberg puts it. We know the Torah is meant to guide us throughout our lives. It's not just a book of information and facts and obligations, but it's actually meant, the word Torah itself actually comes from the word hora, which means to guide. We call Jewish law in Hebrew halacha, which means to walk. The Torah is meant to guide us on how we lead our lives to become great people. So I like to think of the oral law maybe in this lens. Imagine your parents. Imagine yourself as parents and you're raising a child. So you want to instill in your child certain values. You want your child to be responsible. You want your child to be honest. You want your child to have trustworthiness. You want him to be kind, have faith. There's a lot of ideals and values you want to instill in your child. You can't sit down your child, he becomes bar mitzvah, he's 13 years old, you say, son, today you're a man. I want to tell you what you should do in every single scenario of life that you're going to come across for the next 90 years. That's not practical. You teach him the gist of these values, and then there's the real world. There's living the life scenarios in which now, let's say 20 years later, he's 33 years old, and he has an opportunity, let's say, to make a lot of money, but it's not in the most honest of ways, maybe it's not even in the most kind of ways, and he now has to go to his mentor, if it's someone else or if it's you as a parent, and he discusses this struggle with you. And you have to apply the values and put them into the real world of this person's experience. The Torah is almost like the inherent values, and the oral law is the real world. The Torah is able to guide every single person in every situation of life to help them do the truthful, right thing to do in that situation. If you were to write down what that means to every single person, you'll never have, there's no end to the book. It's infinite. How could you ever possibly document that all? That's why the oral law is oral. The oral law is the application of Torah law, how to interpret Torah law, and that changes to each individual person, each individual situation, obviously with a set of rules guiding how to interpret it properly. And so I think the way Rav Noach describes of oral instruction for life really gets to the essence of what the oral law is really meant to be. And that is that when we focus on recognizing that there's one element of studying Torah, and then there's the element of using that oral instruction for life and finding out how does this apply for me to do the right thing in each situation, that is really an amazing way to grow in our wisdom and to grow as people. I hope everyone has a healthy and safe, wonderful Shabbos.